Okay, so you've talked about the importance of vegetables and including a lot of those in your diet. And you and your wife do amazing education on really helping people actually implement this information to experience it in their own body. So I'd like to get into some of that with you. What tips do you have for helping people eat more vegetables in their diet?
Yeah. So first of all, just eating them, I mean, not everyone in the world is going to just sit down and eat a head of romaine. Some of us do that. If you eat bananas, one of the things I like to do, I've been doing for years, is make banana sandwiches. I'll take half a ripe banana like you've got there. Most of yours are getting pretty close to ripe enough there with the spots on them. You stick it in a big head of romaine, you fold it over, you smush it down, and you eat it like that. So if I ate 4 or 5 or so bananas, and each half a banana has a big head of romaine, or when you start to get to the inside, you put a few around, and get a whole head of lettuce in that way. So there you go. You got a gram of omega-3 that way, or, depending how big the lettuce is. So eating vegetables obviously is helpful. If you have salad dressings that you really enjoy, that will help you eat more salads and eat vegetables that way. So that's really helpful. Now, not everyone is as enthused as, say, we all are about eating the massive quantities of vegetables that are really ideal for optimal health. So what other things can you do? You can blend some vegetables. So for example, if you chop up a salad with the S blade in a food processor, that can make it a little bit easier because you don't have to do so much chewing. If you're making a fruit-based smoothie, like a typical smoothie we'll eat in the day is some fresh oranges. When pomegranates are in season, we like pressing out some of the pomegranate juice and putting that in, a couple of fresh ripe bananas, and some frozen fruit like some organic mangoes or something like that. And if you throw a few leaves of kale or collards or even lettuce or something green in there, the fruit tastes so good that the smoothie is still sweet and delicious, but you can get a significant amount of greens in that way and hardly even notice, other than your smoothie will look green. So blending is a really good way. Juicing, if you're so inclined, is a great way to get some concentrated greens in there. You don't want to just make straight kale juice. It's too potent. But if you mixed some kale, like let's say a head of kale, in with a cucumber and half a head of celery and maybe 4 or 5 or 6 carrots, now you've got something that's deep green on the one hand, but because you've diluted it with the celery and the cucumber and added some sweetness from the carrot, it's delicious, but it's not too sweet like straight carrot juice because you have all the other vegetables in there. So juicing can be really helpful. And going back to what I was saying in the beginning, I think steaming greens can be really helpful as well. If we look at the classic example of broccoli, kind of an extreme example, because raw broccoli is tough to eat. I might get through a half a head of raw broccoli and, I've about had it. It's kind of chalky and whatnot, but I could easily eat 2 full heads of steamed broccoli. And so I might lose a little bit of nutrients from the steaming. And my wife's the expert in that part of our curriculum. So you do lose a little bit of nutrition, but if you eat 4 times more steamed broccoli compared to raw broccoli, you come out way ahead nutrition-wise. So find dressings that you like and ways to eat greens directly, and then blending, juicing, and steaming are other ways to get more vegetables in there. And I would rather see somebody 90% raw and 10% steamed greens versus 100% raw and not eating enough vegetables and running into trouble down the road as a result.
I love it. I love it. I mean, you're like a walking encyclopedia. That's what I love about it. You have an answer for everything, and it's very easy to understand. So this is phenomenal. Here's a question for you. What is the number one challenge that you see people face when it comes to a lifestyle change program? And what do you do to recommend overcoming this problem?
Wow. I was talking to my wife about this last night, and we've got this whole big section for a few hours at the end of our curriculum on overcoming challenges and pitfalls in raw food nutrition. And I was trying to debate what's the number one challenge. And some of the contenders were fear of fruit, fear of carbohydrates. Another one was a fear of fat. Because not all, again, it's not just the quantity of fat, it's the quality, the profile of fat that matters. And I think what kind of is the umbrella over all of those things, and it's kind of hard to define, but probably the number one challenge is listening to people who are misinformed, who think they know what they're talking about. And it's easier said than done to overcome this. So if you're out there searching these days on the internet, you'll come across some things that say whole natural plant-based diets are great. They can lower your blood pressure and your cholesterol. They can reverse cardiovascular disease, et cetera. And you're all jazzed. And then the next thing you read about these things called lectins, and they're making a resurgence now. They came up in the 90s with the blood type diet books. And now there's a guy out there getting attention to him, calling attention to himself and saying, for example, that whole grains and beans are bad and you should never eat them. We're like, wait a minute, this one guy said whole grains and beans reverse cardiovascular disease, and this other guy says they have too many lectins and they're bad for you. Well, now what do I do? And then you learn about a raw food diet. Okay, well, there's not as many lectins in fruits and vegetables. Maybe they're okay, and that sounds good, and some people have gotten some good results. Oh man, but this other guy says that fruit's bad for you now. Oh my God, I can't eat that, so I'm eating more nuts and seeds. Yeah, but then this other guy says, these other people say you got to eat a macronutrient profile of 95.5. And geez, I looked up my low fruit raw vegan diet, and 60% of my calories. And you know what they do then? They say, forget about it. I'm going back to McDonald's. I wasn't as healthy that way, but it was so much easier. And it's really difficult to get good information these days. So number one, find people who are getting the results that you want. So when you find people with type 1 diabetes who have awesome profiles and are really healthy over the long term and are getting the results like you guys, hey, that might be an indicator that you've got some good things to say. So find people who are really getting the results that you want, not just talking about them, really getting them. They show you their lab work. They show you the results. They've been at this a long time, and they can really prove their case. Like when someone says to me, you need fish to get DHA, I can say, absolutely not. I've got the case histories to prove it. So getting the results, they've got something solid. And I would encourage people, so number one, to do that and get in that realm. And then from there, also realize that not everybody is identical. I've seen certain kind of pre-made approaches work really well for some people and not for other people. So I love, for example, when I have consultations where I order lab work for couples. And oftentimes we see, because the couples eat together and eat similarly, their lab work profiles look similar. Kind of makes sense. They eat the same and they get the same results. But other times, I'm amazed when they eat the same, but their lab work looks totally different. It's like, wow, biochemical individuality, like a central theme that we always talk about. And sometimes, in addition to having my clinician hat on, I have to put on my diplomacy hat and my counselor hat and talk to the couple about that. I've got different recommendations for how each of them should eat. Maybe one of them needs to steam some food, another one needs to eat a little bit more fat. In fact, I had a situation where the guy was, really gung-ho, low-fat, raw vegan, this is the way to go. And the woman wasn't doing quite as well on that high level of fruit. So she had to bring her fruit down a little bit and get some calories elsewhere. And we talked about that the options were maybe some steamed vegetables or a little bit of extra fat, not too much, like in her salad dressing. And we decided to go with more fat in her salad dressing because that would be less disruptive to the household. Because if the guy smelled stuff cooking in the house and he's adamantly all raw, that would ruffle some feathers. If she added a little bit of extra fat to the dressing and they ate a salad together, that was okay. So the bottom line here, try to find who really makes sense and who's really getting results, not just trying to get your attention and confuse you and sell you things based on getting that attention. And then number two, realize that it's not all or nothing, and everyone has to find the path that works for them, not only nutritionally, but socially, psychologically, what you enjoy. And and there's a whole spectrum out there. So even if you're not doing things perfectly, don't just give up. Don't let idealistic perfection be the enemy of excellence or doing really well or doing better than you were before. So those are just some of the key thoughts I can share about going through this in a rational way without getting so confused with all the. It's kind of a thing I call the information age paradox. There's never been more information about nutrition so easily available to us with summits and websites and all that, but there's never been such a lack of quality information out there either. So be good to yourself, do your homework, and go for the results, and figure out what works best for you.